without any further ado, let's discuss the Philosophy Power Hour. Why Nihilism Matters. PR Cardinal production. I put a lot of work into the animations. Content warnings. Philosophers got really intense about this shit. Especially Nietzsche. Take care of yourselves. I may say some triggering things. I will let people know ahead of time. Hi, Kelsey. How are you? But yeah, philosophers, especially the existentialists, got really intense because when you take it upon yourself to write about why life matters, if you don't have an answer, things can get really bad. So a lot of philosophers were prepared for it to go really bad. Especially Nietzsche, who was very sad when he wrote a lot of things. But we have some time before we get to Nietzsche, because first, there's Soren Kierkegaard. My boy, my weirdo boy. Soren Kierkegaard was one of the first existential nihilists. He was the first one to be like, well, I'm gonna prove the existence of God through reason, and he came to the conclusion you couldn't, because he spent his whole book, the Philosophical Fragments, writing under a pen name, Johannes Climacus, which he chose because it just means it's John and the climax, the peak of the mountain. He wanted to progress up the mountain to get to the top. He was super religious, really weirdly religious, to the point where he was dating this girl, or well, he was stalking this girl who was I think 16 or 15 or 16, and he waited until she was of marrying age to ask her to court her. That's what I was looking for. He waited until she was of age to court, and after she said yes, and they were ready to get married, at the altar he was like, "No, on second thought, you're too pure. I don't want to taint that purity," and he just left. So he was really religious, really Puritan. What's up, Corey? Hopefully you brought enough for everybody. But this guy was a real weirdo. You didn't bring enough for everybody? Disappointed. But yeah, he had a lot of really weird puritanical beliefs, and it kind of snuck into his writing. And by snuck into his writing, I mean I can have some of your avocado, but I don't like avocado. And when I say that it snuck into his writing, he kind of bashed everybody over the head with a baseball bat of religion. Then I can't have any. So, in the Philosophical Fragments, which Kierkegaard wrote under the pen name of Johannes Climacus, he sought to prove God through reason. He wanted to say, well, the rational man should believe in religion. There's no reason why you can't reason your way to belief. And he said, Aristotle, in his infinite wisdom, or his Socrates, I'm pretty sure it's Aristotle, in his infinite wisdom, was the teacher, and we are the students, and Aristotle was speaking on behalf of God, because, God cannot speak to us himself, so we have to learn through the teacher, and the teachers must learn from their teacher, and so on and so forth. So you have this mountain towards God. Since when does Aristotle have infinite wisdom? He doesn't, but Kierkegaard really looked up to him. And at the end of the day, Kierkegaard was like, well, you can't prove religion. you you can't get from A to B. And this was all an attempt for him to prove that, or his attempt to deal with the overwhelming dread of life. He wanted to say, well, life kind of sucks. Life is miserable. He was one of those Puritans. He was like, life is miserable and everything sucks. So what do we have to look forward to? Why are we here? What should we do? And Kierkegaard's answer to that was religion. He said, let me prove that God exists for everybody, so that way we can all be about our happy way. What interestingly, he couldn't do that. He says, in the Philosophical Fragments, he said, and how does God's existence emerge from the proof? Does it follow straight away without any breach of continuity? Or have we not here an analogy to the behavior of the little Cartesian dolls? As soon as I let go of the doll, it stands on its head. As soon as I let it go, I must therefore let it go. So also with the proof. As long as I can keep hold of my proof, that is, continue to demonstrate the existence does not come out, if for no reason than that I am engaged in proving it. But when I let the proof go, the existence is there. This act of letting go is surely also something. It is indeed a contribution of mine. Must not this also be taken into the account? This little moment, brief as it may be, it may not be long, for it is a leap. However brief this moment, if only an instantaneous now, this now must be included in the reckoning. So what Kierkegaard was saying is, you can't reason God's existence. What's up, Adam? Here's my fact checker. Adam's gonna be like, Peter, you're a goddamn idiot. That's not at all what Kierkegaard said. But what Kierkegaard was saying was, you can't reason your way from A to B. You can't reason your way from, well, we exist, we are, we have teachers, they have teachers all the way up, because to show that God exists. He ran into that issue where he was saying, you can't prove religion. You can't prove that there is an almighty. So what you need to do is just take a leap of faith. You can't, and that was his answer to the meaninglessness of life. What do you do with how much life sucks? Life is absolutely miserable. What point do we have in continuing? And he said, well, take a leap of faith. Take the leap of faith. Jump over the gap, and hope beyond hope that there is a God on the other side who can be like, well, you did good. You put your faith in me. You did your best with the world. And here we are now. There's an issue with that, though. And unfortunately, Kierkegaard was the only one of the existential nihilists who was like, the obvious solution to these issues is religion. Because God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off of us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods, simply to appear worthy of it? That's from the Gay Science. I don't know why Nietzsche called it the Gay Science. I never looked that up. I'm sure one of my teachers said it to me, but I was probably half asleep because continental philosophy was like first thing in the morning. But what Nietzsche's saying is basically not that we literally went to heaven and stabbed God with a whoa. Jonker, thank you for that follow. Uh, Nietzsche wasn't saying that we literally went into heaven and stabbed God with oh gosh, what was the name of that? Whatever the name of that knife was from his Dark Materials. Um, the subtle knife. Thank you. We didn't literally go up into heaven and stab God with the subtle knife. Instead, we had a falling out with religion. When Nietzsche was around, this was, I believe, the late 19th century, early 20th century, people had stopped believing. They had fallen out of faith with the church. They had fallen out of faith with religion itself. And Kierkegaard's words no longer applied. Kierkegaard's argument that God was taken out of heaven when Will killed him. Thank you, Mikey J. Yeah, God did ask for it. But he was saying that when we fell out of faith with religion, when we fell out of faith with all that were accepted as a reason to keep living. Why do we keep living? To make God's world as best as it can be, and to we stay alive because that's what He wills. When you no longer have that reason, what do? Are we supposed to create our own games? Are we supposed to put on a festival of atonement? What do? Do we just become God simply in ourselves? And, well, he said this thing where he said, what does your conscience say? You shall become the person you are. And what he meant by that wasn't, he wasn't really saying that, you just need to be your best self. He was saying that in order to deal with this overwhelming dread of society weighing down on us, with this overwhelming weight of the world and our own, now that we've put ourselves in our own hands, we no longer have God to blame for things, we no longer have God to praise for things, we only have ourselves. Well, at that point, what can you do but be yourself? You have no choice but to just do you. Whatever has value in our world now does not have value in itself. According to its nature, nature is always valueless, but has been given value at some time, as a present, and it was we who gave and bestowed it. We need to look at the world and accept that it has no value. Why are we here? Because of random happenstance. Why? What meaning do we have in life? There isn't any. Life is meaning. There is no inherent meaning to life. There is no inherent meaning to my phone. There's no inherent meaning to where is it? This rock. It simply is. We don't have any value. Nothing in the world has value until we give it value. And Nietzsche said, you want to deal with the meaninglessness of life? Here's how. Go and paint a fucking picture. Go take a walk. Go enjoy the world. Go live your best life. And he later added, just don't be an ass about it. Don't oppress other people. The weak oppress the strong by creating rules and all of that stuff. So you need to rise up against that and just do yourself. But that was in a different book. That was in the gosh, what was the name of that book? That was the I have that one too. Where is it? believe it was. Why is it that when I need to find a book, I can't find it? I want to find it like the second I end stream too. I can feel it. Oh, so the front. On the genealogy of morality. In the genealogy of morality, Nietzsche kind of discussed how there is no inherent good or evil, but that's not relevant to existential nihilism. It was more him just being like, live your best life, but don't do it by hurting other people. Don't do it by being an asshole. Fun fact, Nietzsche's sister then took on the morality of good and evil and was like, what if I rewrote it to make the Aryans look like the good guys? Nietzsche hated her. He also hated anti-Semitism in general. Nietzsche was actually a pretty rad guy. And, you can be an asshole if nothing has value. Because you give things value. Nothing has an inherent value. But by painting a picture, you create the value for yourself. So, when you treat other people with the value you've given them, by saying you don't have or you don't have an inherent meaning, I don't have an inherent meaning, nothing has an inherent meaning. You're putting everything on equal playing field. So you're saying nothing has an inherent meaning. Now I have to give it value. And I'm going to trust that you've given yourself the same value I've given myself. So if you love yourself and I love myself, and I love that painting I did, and I love that song I wrote, and you love that book you wrote, there's no reason I should look down on what you've created, and there's no reason why you should look down on what I've created. But you can't take away someone else's value, someone else's self-given value. That's basically what he was saying. Don't be an asshole by taking away from what somebody else has given to themselves. Don't do that. So if ice cream tastes good, the good taste just comes from you and not the objective reality. Yes, exactly. Because ice cream's flavor is for you. If you put the ice cream on the ground isn't going to be like, yes, this ice cream tastes good. The ice cream will not taste good until you consume it and give it that goodness value. Because somebody else may be like, I don't like that ice cream. That ice cream doesn't taste good to me. So they're giving it a different value than you're giving it. There is no, maybe that's a bad example because like the good tastiness is a subjective thing anyway. But that's kind of the point. There is no objective value to anything. There's no objective meaning to anything. So yeah. No. Another guy came out. I kind of want to stay on this slide for a little bit because Nietzsche had a great mustache, and it's an amazing mustache, really. One of the only existentialists with good facial hair. I used to always there's like a running joke with all the philosophers. It was like all the greatest philosophers have amazing facial hair. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Confucius, Nietzsche, Karl Marx. Running through all the philosophers in my head. David Hume. Like all of the greatest philosophers had amazing facial hair. But Nietzsche's the only one of the existentialists with facial hair. But yeah, so another person decided to keep going with that. Another person was like, all right, cool. So nothing has the value except what we've given it. And I need to deal with that myself. How do I give myself value? And that's where radical freedom comes in. Yeah. Screw the rules. Woo! Jean-Paul Sartre was a. The mustache is objectively amazing. Jean-Paul Sartre was a wild person. He kind of took what Nietzsche said and went to the extreme with it. He was like, he said, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. He said this in Being and Nothingness. You know, we've been thrown into the world, and he's not counting children. He does say very clearly, listen, children don't have the rational thinking to be free. They're told what to believe, they're told what to do, and so on and so forth. Jean-Paul Sartre Jean-Paul Sartre was so wild. Even Albert Camus was like, this guy is too much of a rebel. So everybody was like, this guy is wild. I believe he was living in a pre-World War II era world too. So this was before World War II, and I think he was alive at the start of World War II. He died during the war. I may be wrong about when, though. But he believed that, you know, once you reach a certain age and are able to think for yourselves and think rationally and, you know, nobody else is there to make decisions for you, you're cursed with freedom. He thought of freedom as, like, the worst thing you could be. You know, I am responsible for everything, except for my very responsibility. For I am not the foundation of my being. Therefore, everything takes place as if I were compelled to be responsible. I am abandoned in the world in the sense that I find myself suddenly alone and without help, engaged in a world for which I bear the whole responsibility without being able, whatever I do, to tear myself away from this responsibility for an instant. He saw our freedom as this absolute curse that we've just been given. He said, listen, we've come into this world. We don't know what's going on. We don't have any set goals. There's no meaning to life. What do we do? It's a good thing I remember to refill my water bottle yesterday. I always do this thing where I forget to refill my water bottle, do a lot of talking, and I'm like, why am I so fucking thirsty? But he said, you know, you're living in bad faith if you think you have to do one particular thing or live one specific purpose. We're free to do whatever we want. And if you think, okay, well, my destiny in life is to be a lawyer, or my destiny in life is to write the next great American novel, well, you're living in bad faith. You're giving yourself a specific meaning, and your life is going to be miserable because of it. He says, life has no meaning a priori on the surface. It is up to you to give it a meaning. And value is nothing but the meaning that you choose. So he's taken what Nietzsche said, he's taken what Kierkegaard said, and he's taken it to the extreme. He's saying, listen, we live in this state where the only person we're liable to is ourselves. The only person we can answer to at the end of the day is ourselves. There is no higher power to tell us, well, I put you on earth to do this. Did you do this? He's saying, well, we all came into this world covered in blood, crying and screaming. And if you want to go out that same way, be my guest. But we were thrown into this world, no idea what to do, and, well, just gonna have to deal with it. You're gonna have to find a way to give yourself meaning. You're gonna have to find a way to be happy. It'll give your life some interest and symmetry, exactly. He was saying, like, he was stuck in quarantine for too long. funnily enough, Jean-Paul Sartre wasn't stuck in quarantine. He was having fun his whole life. This guy was he was going nuts with radical freedom. If you ever want to see some of the wild stuff he got up to, you can read Existential Comics, which I love. It's this great like niche philosophy humor, but sometimes they do stuff that everybody will understand. This guy was wild. um, he was like one of the head writers for Albert Camus' uh, uh, zine called The Rebel. And Albert Camus, when Jean Paul Sartre fell out of phase with everybody, because they were just like, damn, he's too out there. Albert Camus was like, dude, keep writing for me. Did he have a skateboard? I don't think skateboards existed yet, but he would have. He would have had a skateboard. And if you look at existential comics, every time he's drawn and they're making fun of radical freedom, they'll draw him with a skateboard because he does that stuff. He was also in relationships with the other great big existential thinkers of the time. And when I say in a relationship with the other great big thinkers, I do mean that literally for some people. Um, Fun fact: Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre were sleeping together. Um, I don't know what she's. I look at her, and I look at him. I look at her. I look at him, and I don't get it. Power to them. I guess he was that radical that she was like, "Damn, dude, I like it." She could do better, especially because she was also friends with Albert Camus. But I think he was a little bit too creepy. We'll get to him in a second. But Simone de Beauvoir was like one of the greatest women thinkers of the time. In fact, I would argue she's one of the greatest women thinkers in history. Uh, if you look back at like philosophy through the ages, it's full of old dead white dudes. It's loaded from uh, Socrates all the way up to Parfit. Just a bunch of white dudes. Yeah, the Chinese ones in there too, and you have a few black people who did philosophy as well. I love them too, but for the majority, especially what's studied in school, it's old dead white people and Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir is that good that she has been known for more than just her feminist philosophies. You have a bunch of other female philosophers, but those ones were typically known for doing feminist theory and stuff for things. Um, so the fact that she's able to be known for her existentialism shows just how great she was. And she did agree with Jean-Paul Sartre. She said, yes, we're thrown into the world alone, and everything is our choice. She said that, we're condemned to violence. We're condemned to be thrown into this world alone, not knowing what we're doing. We're going to panic and attack each other. From the very beginning, existentialism finds itself as a philosophy of ambiguity. We don't know what we're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And that's fine. She was saying, like, listen, just because we got thrown into this alone doesn't mean we have to stay alone. In fact, she actually completely disagreed with that. She believed that uh, that we could only do this as a group. She said, John Paul, I love you. They weren't married, but they were living together. I'm pretty sure they were in a civil marriage at some point. Um, I think until he died, and she moved on. But they were together for like a long time. And she said, listen, your brain says you're the one who doesn't know what you're doing. Well, that's where Simone de Beauvoir will agree with you. She'll say, listen, I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe that person does. Pretty sure they had an open marriage. Yeah, they did. They, I don't think they were married. That's the thing. I don't think they were married, but they were in an open relationship. I know they lived together and were doing a lot of stuff together. But I don't think they actually got married. Yeah, they were. It was just an open relationship. She never got married to him. It began in 1929. De Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre were partners and remained so for 51 years until his death in 1980. De Beauvoir chose never to marry or set up a joint household, and she never had children. Yeah, they got up to a lot of stuff. But she said that she said in the Ethics of Ambiguity, basically that, just because we're alone doesn't mean we have to stay alone. She said, is this kind of ethics individualistic or not? Yes, if one means by that it accords to the individual an absolute value, and that it recognizes in him alone the power of laying the foundation of his own existence. It is the individualism in the sense in which the wisdom of the ancients, the Christian ethics of salvation, and the Kantian ideal of virtue also merit this name. It is opposed to the totalitarian doctrines which raise up beyond man the mirage of mankind. But it is not solipsistic, since the individual is defined only by his relationship to the world and to other individuals. He exists only by transcending himself, and his freedom can be achieved only through the freedom of others. He justifies his existence by a movement which, like freedom, springs from his heart, but which leads outside of him. So what she was saying is, yes, we're all free. Each and every single one of us is free. And so long as we keep everybody else free, we will remain to be free ourselves. So this goes back into the whole thing where she was saying, where like every existentialist will agree with, where they're all saying, listen, we're all free to make our own choices. Don't take that freedom away from anybody else. Don't enslave people. A lot of thinkers, a lot of philosophers were against slavery. Fun fact. I've never read about a philosopher who was like, yeah, slavery is good, let's keep it. Every philosopher was like, slavery is the worst thing ever. It wasn't until the late 19th, 20th century, and they were like, yeah, okay, here's what we're going to do about it. Because I think it was Hegel, Adam can correct me on, who gave the master-slave duality. It was either Hegel or Heidegger, because I hated reading both of them, and I never actually finished reading their stuff because it gave me a headache. Because they were both unnecessarily wordy. Like, really unnecessarily wordy. Unnecessarily wordy by a philosopher's stance. Like, even the other philosophers, if we go back to Kierkegaard, he said it too. He was like, you wrote a lot unnecessarily. Even the philosophers were like, guys, tone it down a notch. Because they just wrote so much. And, but they said, listen, the master-slave duality sucks. The master will always be a slave to the slave because of this relationship the two of them have. So the only way to be free is to free your slaves. They all just stuck with that from a theoretical perspective for a pretty long time, especially these Germans and French people. I think Rousseau did it as well, where Rousseau was like, we need freedom. When? Now. How? I don't know. You figure it out. So the French and the Germans were sitting down over there while people were still enslaved in America, because they were like, it's wrong, but we don't know anything better, and we enjoy having our cheap product. But Simone de Beauvoir was late enough that she was speaking about some stuff that was pretty relevant. She was saying, listen, the totalitarian doctrines that are rising up in the society around us need to be squashed. They aren't okay. We need to get rid of them. Because if they continue to rise, we're all going to lose our freedom. Their freedom is going to become more valued than our freedom. And that's not okay, because every single person deserves to be free. She said, society cares about the individual only insofar as he is profitable. The young know this. Their anxiety as they enter in upon social life matches the anguish of the old as they are excluded from it. That was in the coming of age. And she said she was saying, listen, society doesn't care about us. We need to care about us. She was a mood. Simone de Beauvoir was ages ahead of her time. She was writing the. She had obviously read Marx, like she had obviously read Marx and agreed with him. She was saying, listen, now is the time. Society only cares about us insofar as we are profitable. The young people who society looks down on know this. The old people who society has ditched know this. The only people who don't seem to know this are the people who are profiting from society. The only people who don't seem to know this are the cogs in the machine who have given up their freedoms. We can't do this. We cannot give up our freedoms. We need to continue fighting for what we believe in. We need to continue to fight for who we are and our own value. One's life has value so long as one attributes value to the life of others by means of love, friendship, indignation, and compassion. She was saying, listen, we need to value each other. We see ourselves as the other. She was saying, listen, we need... Oh God, there's a typo in the PowerPoint. I wrote this while I was on cold medicine, and I'm just noticing that I spelled dread without an A. Radical freedom. That should be my excuse for everything. But she was saying, listen, we're responsible for ourselves, and we need to give each other the value we give ourselves. She was agreeing with Nietzsche on that. She was saying, listen, we need to love each other like we love ourselves. We need to give love, friendship, indignation, and compassion. I love how indignation is in there, because she was like, she's outright saying it. She's like, fuck the system. We need to overthrow the system and love each other, and that's how we're going to be happy. That's how we're going to give each other value, because society only cares about us insofar as we're profitable. But we can care about each other. We can give each other value that society doesn't. And something that she agreed with Nietzsche on, too, was how do we deal with this? With the arts. You know? We need to create something that isn't profitable. You need to create something that society cannot put a value on. She was saying, go ahead, write your book. Write what makes you happy. Go ahead and draw that painting. I don't care how bad it looks. Paint it because it makes you happy. People around you will love it because you made it. You know? Go ahead and sing that song. We don't care how tone deaf you are, because the people around you will love you for who you are. They're going to love you for what you've done. And you know what? If society can't profit off of it, all the better. You know? So she was really against the system. Which brings me to the man of the hour. Which brings me to the man who made me fall in love with existential philosophy. And it was my boy, Albert Camus. There is only one serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Deciding whether or not life is worth living is to answer the fundamental question in philosophy. All other questions follow from that. Albert Camus was saying, listen, all these questions you're having about what is art, you know, how do we have knowledge, is there a God? None of this matters at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, why are we alive? Why are we here? Nietzsche thought about that so seriously that he was prepared to kill himself. It's a bit anecdotal. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for. Apocryphal, that's the word. It's a bit apocryphal, but it's said that Nietzsche actually wrote with a with a big intent. He wrote, I think it was, maybe in the gay science. I'm not sure which one he wrote, but he wrote one of them prepared at the end to just off himself if he couldn't find a meaning to life. And Albert Camus was saying, yeah, that's the only thing that really matters. You want to deal with everything else? Deal with that first. Deal with why we're here first, and then we can worry about, is math real? Because if life doesn't have meaning, why does it matter whether or not math is real? So he said, listen. He then decided to tell a story. A story we all may be familiar of. He tells the story of a man who had wanted to overcome death. A man who said, listen, I'm so scared of death that I don't want to die. So I'm going to go take that man over there. I'm going to go take that guy. I'm going to take death, lock him in a cage. We may have heard of this person. You know, I've talked about him a lot. He's one of my favorite people of all time. Dracula. Exactly. He took Dracula and locked Dracula in a cage. Sorry, Dracula took death and put death in a cage. Now, Sisyphus. You have already grasped that Sisyphus is the absurd hero. He is as much as through his passions as through his torture. His scorn of the gods, his hatred of death, and his passion for life won him that unspeakable penalty. The unspeakable penalty being that when Thanatos finally got out of the cage, he killed. He dragged Sisyphus right down to Tartarus, and Persephone made him push a rock up and down a hill for all of eternity. He said, in which his whole being is exerted towards accomplishing nothing. This is the price that must be paid for the passions of this earth. Nothing is told to us about Sisyphus in the underworld. Myths are made for the imagination to breathe life into them. He's saying, listen, that man over there has been cursed for all of eternity to do absolutely nothing. He will never accomplish anything. Ever. That wasn't Sisyphus, that was Tantalus. No, Tantalus killed his son. Did Sisyphus kill his guest? Yeah, I think it was Sisyphus who did kill his guest, you're right. No, Tantalus didn't kill his guests. Because Tantalus' guests were the gods. And Tantalus was like, I'm gonna feed you my child. Because that's the sacrifice worthy of the gods. And they were all like, sorry, you did what? I mean, there are some tellings where it turned out that Tantalus didn't feed them his son, but his son was busy off fucking Poseidon. But that's not relevant. Yeah. Tantalus not only did a human sacrifice, but did a human sacrifice and then fed that human to the gods, and they were all like, no, this isn't okay. What was I saying? Right. So, Sisyphus had been cursed with the eternal torture of pushing a rock up and down a hill. He pushes the rock up, it rolls back down. He needs to go back down and push it right back up. And he's going to keep doing that for all of eternity. What purpose? To what end? There is none. He's doing absolutely nothing. For his whole life. What's more absurd than that? He was saying, listen, that man over there is the absurd hero. He's doing all of this for all of eternity for no purpose. He could just sit down and accept being whipped, and that would probably be more happy than pushing the rock up and down the hill for all of eternity. And yet he still does. He still pushes his rock up the hill for it to roll back down the hill, and he needs to go back, push it back up, and it goes back down. Just Absolutely absurd. He's getting whipped anyway. He may as well get whipped and just take a nap. You know, why is he working out for all of eternity while doing this? Uh, and well, Camus said there is no reason for it. He's doing the absurd. There is no logical reason for why Sisyphus is pushing this rock up a hill. And there never will be a reason. They do less whiffing when he pushes the rock. I mean, less whiffing is still whiffing. But there's no reason for him to be doing this. It's absurd. Truly is absurd. And that's fine. You know? He says that's the trick to it. He says, one does not discover the absurd without being tempted to write a manual of happiness. What? By such narrow ways? There is but one world, however. Happiness and the absurd are two suns of the same earth. They are inseparable. It would be a mistake to say that happiness necessarily springs from the absurd discovery. It happens as well as that the feeling of the absurd springs from happiness. He's saying that we're here cursed on society to do we're here cursed on earth to do the same thing. What end are we doing anything? We're going to die anyway. Eventually, every single human being will be wiped out from the face of existence. Why are we working ourselves up day after day to create a better tomorrow when eventually there will not be a tomorrow? Yes, maybe it'll be a bajillion lifetimes away, but eventually there isn't going to be a tomorrow. In fact, there could be no tomorrow. There could be no tomorrow today. We're getting worked up for tomorrow. Euripides says Sisyphus is Odysseus' dad. Really? Huh. Poor Odysseus. But yeah, like, the world could end literally tomorrow. Why are we getting worked up about things? And he's saying, honestly, there is no reason. We are pushing the rock up the hill. We're pushing the rock up the hill, getting whipped by life's misfortunes. But at the end of the day, that rock is going to come tumbling down. And the only difference between us and Sisyphus is it's going to kill us on the way back down. Or somebody else to push it back up. You know? He's saying that that we have to, that we're stuck in this never-ending cycle, and yet we still find happiness. So there is no if or, you know? There is no, you either push the rock up the hill or you be happy. We're pushing the rock up anyway. We're going to continue to push the rock up, and we're going to take pleasure in it. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. He's saying, listen, let's just imagine, because myths are made for the imagination to breathe life into them. Let's imagine Sisyphus. And let's imagine that as he pushes the rock up the hill, he gets happy. Let's imagine that as he sees the peak, then maybe he's thinking, this could be it. This could be the end. I'm nearly there, Prince said. Nearly free, nearly finished. And then you push the rock up and it just comes right back down. He says, oh well, maybe next time. You must imagine Sisyphus happy. You must imagine Sisyphus happy so that you can be happy pushing the rock up the hill. You know, we live in this world where life is absurd. There is no meaning in life. To look for meaning in life is absurd because there isn't any. But there's no meaning in death either. We live, we die. So what? This is the only reason we have to not kill ourselves. Why do I believe life is meaningless? So, the reason I believe life is meaningless, this is me personally, not what the other philosophers think. The reason I believe life is meaningless is because there is no inherent one thing we can do. We as human beings are so multifaceted, so amazing that, like, what purpose do we really have? What purpose do we have to say create a better tomorrow? What purpose do we have? What purpose do I have sitting here telling you these things? What purpose do you have sitting there asking me these questions? There is none. There is no meaning to any of this. To look for meaning is absurd. I strongly agree with Albert Camus. I think that he was spot on with it. Like Corey said, what is he going to do once that's done? It's like a dog chasing a car. What are we going to do at the end of the day? We're chasing the car for all of it, for all of our lives, for no inherent reason. The world could end tomorrow, and everything we've done to this point will be for nothing. It'll be for absolutely nothing. But we can still find happiness in what we do. Because just because there's no inherent meaning doesn't mean we can't still give it meaning. Just because what I do doesn't matter doesn't mean I can't still take pleasure in it. I must imagine Sisyphus happy. I must imagine that this man pushing this rock up this hill for all of eternity is happy, because if he isn't happy and he's doing that for all of eternity, why am I happy doing it for 100 years, give or take? You know? So Camus was saying, listen, life is absurd, death is absurd, so we have no choice but to just keep on living. We have no choice but to look into the void of our lives, look into the inherent meaninglessness, and say, fuck you, dude. I'm going to make a meaning of my life. I'm going to go out there and make the world a better place because I want to do that. You know, it goes all the way back to what my boy Sartre was saying. The world is ours for the making. We have been thrown into the world absolutely free. We have no choice but to live our lives free. So what do we do with that? What do we do with this freedom we've been given? De Beauvoir says we need to treat other people like they're free. We need to love each other. We need to care for each other. We need to treat each other with love, compassion, and indignation, and friendship. And then Camus is taking it a step up. He's like, not only do we have to live with these things, we have to live with these things knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, they don't matter. At the end of the day, all the friendships I make, all the love I give, all the compassion I give is for nothing. There is no reason to do this stuff, but we're going to do it anyway. He said, the absurd is an experience to be lived through, a point of departure, the equivalent in existence of Descartes' methodical doubt. Absurdism, like methodical doubt, has wiped the state clean. It leaves us in a blind alley. But like methodical doubt, it can be returned upon itself. It can, by returning upon itself, open up a new field of investigation, and in the process of reasoning, then pursues the same course. I proclaim that I believe in nothing, and that everything is absurd, but I cannot doubt the validity of my proclamation, and I must at least believe in my protest. The first and only evidence that is supplied me within the terms of the absurdist experience is rebellion. Rebellion is born of the spectacle of irrationality, confronted with an unjust and incomprehensible condition. He's saying, listen, I agree with Sartre. We've been thrown into this world, absolutely free. We don't know what's going on. None of us know what's going on. But the only thing we can do, the only thing we can do to be happy is to rebel. Not necessarily against a specific system or against the establishment, albeit Albert Camus was also very against the establishment. He was literally writing this literally from The Rebel. He was very much He was very much like, listen, we need to overthrow society. We need to take back what's ours. We need to live happily. We need to live free. Um, what I'm saying, just Germany. So what he was saying was, listen, after everything we've learned, after everything we've gotten to this point, after all we've done, why do we keep going? It's absurd to keep going. But we're going to rebel against that absurdity. We're going to rebel against the absurdity and say, listen, you want to tell me that my desire to push on is absurd? So be it. So be it. My life doesn't have to have meaning. I don't need to have a meaning to do what I'm doing. I don't have to have meaning to continue on with my life. But I'm going to do it anyway because I'm going to rebel against that belief. You know, as irrational as it is, as incomprehensible as it may be, I am going to give my life meaning so that I can be happy. And yeah, I personally think that's the trick. You know, life doesn't have a meaning, but that doesn't mean we can't give it one. In fact, not only does that not mean we can't give it one, does it not mean we can't give it one? It's our duty to give it one. The one thing we can do in our lives is rebel. The one thing we can do is say, you know, screw the system. I am going to go on and force myself to be happy. I am going to not only imagine Sisyphus happy, I'm going to force myself to be happy with pushing the rock up the hill, with chasing the car for all of eternity. Because there is no other choice. There is no other end to it. There is no after. We have one life to live. We have to live it. There is no secret immortality. There is nothing that we do is going to be set in stone. And that's fine. We have to doubt that anything will ever come of what we do. I may be forgotten tomorrow by half of you. Half of you may just be listening to me, not even hearing what I'm saying, you know. But that's fine. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this, you know, because it makes me happy. Who's going to speak to this? Albert Camus. Uh, one of my personal heroes. Um, because he was just like, man, what choice do we have? What choice do we have in this world but to rebel against the meaninglessness of our lives and just do greatness? I think that's all I have. Yeah, that's all I have. Here's a picture of Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. Because that's all we have left to do. That's all we have left to do at the end of the day. Push the rock up the hill. Imagine Sisyphus happy. Be happy with the absurd. Don't wait for life to give you meaning. You give meaning to life. Stare into the void and scream into it. Scream into the void and say, listen, I don't care that you have given. I just see, you know, I don't care that that you've given me no meaning. I don't care that, you know, we're doing this because, you know, I have no choice. How dare they speak boldly like this? Listen, uh, this isn't even wearing clothes in this picture. This is obviously an uh, artistic depiction. Um, say I don't care that life doesn't have an inherent meaning. Scream into the void that you're gonna find meaning in it. Stare into the void and just do what you want. You know, uh, personally, like I'll say that there's really only two choices at this point. When you say life doesn't have meaning, you have two choices. You can take the leap of faith, like Kierkegaard, or you can stare that void in the face and just scream at it. Scream into the void. Say, "I'm gonna find meaning in you anyway." You know, as absurd as it may be, and yeah, uh, Boldy deserves better. Yeah, that's existential nihilism in a nutshell. We went through the Germans, we went through the French, the only two groups of people who really care about this stuff. Everybody else was interested in like ethics. Uh, so yeah, are there any questions?